Hello, welcome to the programme. That old Henry Ford slogan, any colour as long as it's black, brilliantly articulated the philosophy of mass production. And don't scorn it, it brought us cheap consumption. But capitalism has been in a struggle ever since, between cheap uniformity and more expensive choice and customisation. Cars are no longer all black. Customers want to select their colour and are willing to pay for that privilege. But individualisation is now going much further. We're in the midst of a personalisation revolution. Or actually, I should rephrase that into a question. Are we in the midst of a personalisation revolution? That's our topic today. The premise is that as society becomes more affluent, we're happy to pay for some self-expression in our purchases. And also, technology is making it easier for companies to personalise products. So let's investigate. We have a packed studio, 4 guests, 3 of whom represent varied businesses that pursue personalisation in some form. And let's meet them. And first up is Darren Disley, Chief Executive of a new cell therapy company, Mogrify. What is Mogrify's product, Darren?
So Mogrify actually takes any adult human cell on an individual basis and can convert it into any other adult human cell, which opens up a plethora of opportunities for creating medicines that are personalised to the individual.
And personalised medicine is perhaps the most exciting application of personalisation. We should just say you've only recently become the top man there. You were working for another company that was very into personalised.
Yes, I started and grew a personalised medicine company called Horizon Discovery, from startup to stock market listing and into global market leader in gene editing and gene modulation. And gene editing is another means of how you understand the genetic drivers of a disease, whether it be on a population basis or an individual basis, and development of medicines that are targeted to either adjust or correct those diseases on a personal level.
All right, my second guest is Georgina Sylvester, Chief Operating Officer Designate of Handelsbanken UK. Very briefly, Georgina, what is Handelsbanken?
So Handelsbanken started back in the 1800s in Sweden, and at the moment we're operating in 6 home markets, Scandinavian countries, UK and the Netherlands. We've been in the UK since 1982, and we are quite a different bank than your high street bank. So we have a completely decentralised banking model, and we're a relationship bank. So
Handelsbanken account, you have someone there who you deal with and who knows your name, basically.
Absolutely. And the branch staff that you work with, if you're a customer, are completely empowered to make the majority of the decisions for you.
Right. So the computer has been replaced by a person. It's the person who says no or yes rather than the computer who says no. OK, Handelsbanken, the banking and financial services sector. Another example where personalisation can advance. Let's talk next to Carl Howkins. He's the managing director of Citron UK. Everybody knows what Citron UK is, Carl. How big is it, though, in the UK?
Well, I'm pleased that everybody knows, so thank you for that compliment. But so we're about a 3.5% market share player. So we sell just under 90,000 cars and vans in the UK, in a market that's 2.6 million.
Right. And personalisation when it comes to buying a car is... People can do what I did on your website this morning, which is I can choose a car and then configure it in multiple ways.
Absolutely.
And I was looking, I mean, there are so many choices that in the end, if you multiply this choice by another choice, 9 colours, 3 engine, 4 engine types, 6 trims or whatever, there are probably 50,000 versions of each car.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest one is a C3 Aircross, which is an SUV, because everyone's going SUVs now. I mean, there's over 800 permutations of what you can configure on a C3 Aircross, so different roof colours, etc., etc.
Right. All right, well, let me introduce my 4th guest, Kate Ancketill, the founder and chief executive of GDR Creative Intelligence. And your firm, Kate, analyses trends in different sectors and looks at how new technologies and consumer behaviour impact businesses. Give us a little bit of the kind of theory, the different forms of personalisation and the different things people might mean about it. We've clearly got 3 very different businesses here who are going to tell us about the trade-off between cost and individualisation.
Personalisation is truly unique products and services created with some expertise for a particular individual customer. So
example?
Think Savile Row suit.
Right.
Okay, so we all understand what that is. And we've always thought, oh, that's a bit expensive. It's not for your average person. It's the high end. That still exists and is massively important, but often is now cheaper because of the application of technology.
We'll talk about that.
but it's unique to you. So whereas I would say at the other end, or nearer the other end of the spectrum, is mass customization, where essentially you're getting something that feels unique to you, but is actually at mass market prices.
Is this Citroen? Is this Carl's product? No, it's not being rude. It's just being...
yes, because, it's not a Bentley that somebody's creating absolutely from scratch with regard to every aspect of that car for an individual being unique to them.
You can't choose the colour. I mean, you choose the colour out of a little range that they've given you.
Exactly. It's a standard product, and you've got, a number of choices. And once you put all those configurations together, there may be a billion outcomes. But from the point of view of the modularity of the production, you're probably changing 4 or 6 things on the production line. I'm just totally guessing. Maybe many more than that. But the general idea is it's a modular manufacturing system that allows some degree of tailoring.
I tend to think personalisation is not new. You've always had it if you're willing to pay more. And it is essentially a luxury. It has been a luxury. And all that's happened is the threshold of luxury has come down and more people have been able to reach it. But why don't we, because this is the most exciting aspect of it, is the trade-off between cost and individuality of the products you're buying. Let's take banking, Georgina, because I can go to Handelsbanken and I can have a relationship with a banker who'll understand my finances. What am I paying for that?
I mean, that will literally depend on every single customer and their individual circumstances. So the decentralised model that we have allows the branch manager to really look at the individual and look at the service that they need, the solutions they need, and tailor the pricing of the products and the fees that they charge to that person. So we don't have set a range of fees. There is no product list and
you find out when
tariffs.
You go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that is true personalisation to the individual.
Now, I can talk a little about, because I have some experience of this, and I think it is a good example of individualisation. I was turned down for a mortgage by my own bank, who I've been with for decades, because there was some tweak on the land registry entry that they just said, we're never going to give a mortgage on that property. And it wasn't, no negotiation, it's just we don't do it. They were the cheapest mortgage, but they would not offer it to me. And I did go to Handelsbanken, and they did give me a mortgage because there was no real problem on the lease. It's just Handelsbanken took half an hour to check that it was no real problem. It was just a fake problem, and gave me a mortgage. And that is, I suppose, individual attention at its best.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But it was more expensive. And when I came to remortgage and I'd fixed the thing on the land register, I didn't in the end. I wasn't feeling quite charitable enough to pay the extra that I would have had to pay.
No, I guess the prospect, though, with Handelsbanken is not just product driven. So what we're actually offering is a long-term relationship and a view on you holistically. So if you'd have stuck with Handelsbanken, what we would have worked with you to look at is the next thing that you might need or other solutions for your complete package. So we're not product driven, we're not volume driven. We're very relationship.
That's your question, because I really like the model, right? I like that link to the person is one thing that's really missing as globalization has occurred, and that personalization of the offering, if you like. But ultimately, things are still limited by the operating model. You have a framework of decision making that's based on risks and rewards and calculations on where you can operate within a framework. People will still say no to joining because ultimately there's a boundary whereby you can't personalize or you don't personalize.
I think
people walk away.
Taking your point, Darren, I think the difference for us is that decision making is done in the local branch by local people that understand their customers and understand the local marketplace. So they are really as close as they can be to making the right decision.
Georgina, I can say this from 2 aspects. One, I actually have a private banking manager. I bank with one of the high street banks, but and for me, people are still so important. And I totally agree with you. And if you look at our business, the car business, people are coming a lot more back towards the touch point. So Kate mentioned Bentley as an example. You do get mass configuration from our business, but the actual research that we've done, most people want to come and see the product. They want to touch it.
Totally agree.
Similar to your product. In our business, there's a big trend to coming back in. Yes, customers are what we call transaction ready because they configure their car. But it's true because, the days of people shopping around to, say, 3-4 car showrooms now, it's down to, on average, 1.7, if you look at the actual visits. So they know what colour they want. But to actually get in the car, feel it, smell it, touch it, it's very similar to your industry.
If I may be devil's advocate here for a moment, I personally, when I thought about buying a car, I thought, well, of course you'd want to go and sit in it. You'd want to go for a test drive and see, how comfy the seats are and so on. But actually, the recent research that we've seen is that people increasingly don't actually need to go and sit in the car. They will increasingly just configure it online and then actually just buy it. I mean,
Well, it's interesting because Elon Musk is just basically saying
he's getting rid of his showrooms.
Get rid of all the showrooms and we'll just sell them online. It's a cost we
Exactly.
don't. But it's interesting though, because Carl, let's talk about cars. Carl, you're citing, if you like, the retail experience as part of the personalisation experience.
Yeah.
The touch is part of the experience, the individual experience I get if I buy one of your cars. What about the product though? I mean, so the configurator. I go online and I configure the engine size, the type,
The colours, the wheels.
yeah, do I have this wheel or that wheel,
absolutely,
alloy wheels or non-alloy wheels? Do all customers do that, or do some just say, I just want a basic car, just give me
Honestly, most customers do. Just to disagree a little bit, Kate, we in our business, there was a trend 3 years ago where people were talking about, do I want to actually buy a car on the internet? And it swung even the other way now, where they do come in, as I mentioned, transaction ready. They know the colour, they know the engine because it suits them. And obviously they've got a budget in mind, but they still want to have that, is it right for me? Can I fit my weekend hobbies in the car, if you like? So
It smells so good in the showroom, don't they? We basically buy a car, you better go and get that pleasure. How much does it cost to give those customers those choices? How much are people paying to individualise their car?
People generally start with paint, which is about £500 for us. And then, you can choose to have bigger wheels, you can colour code your roof. In general terms, how far can you go? You can be 3,500 if you want to.
How do you communicate it to the factory? What happens? I go to the dealer, I say, this is the one I want. This pack, I'll have the climate pack that'll put in the aircon and I don't know, heated windscreen or whatever. And I'll have this kind of seat and I'd like these wheels. What happens then?
Clearly, we're a mass-produced manufacturer with a certain amount of plants across the world, and we can't build every permutation. So clearly, the configurator takes you each time to, as I mentioned before, your colour first, your wheels first, and. So there's always a conformity that comes out of your choice. Which
Now we learn.
Through
You
the manufacturer.
You thought you were in control of the configuration.
I'd like
but
to be
actually,
sometimes.
It's all about limiting your choice for the production line to conveniently
clearly we're a business, okay, and we want to offer choice. But clearly, if you wanted one combination with another, which wasn't possible, the website wouldn't allow you to do it anyway. So, but we do build factory orders for customer spec.
Kate, is there a tendency for companies to sell us a lot of add-on at a very high margin? And I just wonder whether personalisation, Kate, can be used as a kind of...
Well, in theory, personalisation should reduce waste and unsold products because everything that's created is created because somebody wanted that particular one. And of course, in things like online fashion, which it's desperately unsustainable, I personally think when people are buying 3 or 4 sizes and then they know that they can send 2 back that are not going to fit and it's free delivery and so on, that's not sustainable. It's not good for the planet. But in theory, if you're using something like the Zozo suit, which was trialled in the last couple of years in Japan. It's a stretchy black nylon outfit. It's free. You get it through the post. It's sent to you by the equivalent of ASOS in Japan. You pull it over your head. It's got 300 dots on it. You stand in front of your smartphone with your arm sticking out and you do a sort of 360 turn, 1 kind of second at a time. And it obviously takes a 3D scan of your body and then it knows thousands of measurements for your particular unique body. And so then the idea is it can show you online exactly the clothes that will fit you, and you won't therefore buy as many clothes that won't fit you, so you won't have to send them back.
Commercially, did it actually catch on?
It's a complex story. It was withdrawn recently.
I'll take that as a no.
Well, they said that they had enough data to no longer need the individualised Zozo suit, that they could now use the data from the 3 million suits that had been sent out so that people could just put in their weight and height they can now give you equivalent advice on what will and won't fit you just based on your height and weight. So the jury is out on whether that's actually worked. But we do know that Amazon has a patent on a whole manufacturing system, which it has not put into practice yet, as far as we know, which does exactly the same thing. People will scan themselves, they will have many measurements of their bodies, and Amazon will manufacture custom, tailored, bespoke clothing to each individual's needs. And that, in theory, will massively diminish the need for returns and, let's face it, landfill, because everything comes out fitting you perfectly. If it works, it's brilliant, but it's obviously rather damaging for everybody that isn't Amazon if it does actually work. So whatever Amazon does is terrifying for every other retailer.
OK, Darren, tell us first a little about the potential and what individualised, personalised medicine we're seeing and how close we are to the benefits coming out.
So to start at the macro level, because I'm going to come back to that, if we look at the biggest challenge of the next 100 years, it's how we're going to be able to feed, fuel and heal a population that is critically ageing in the West, but most rapidly ageing in the developing world. Now, healthcare is clearly the biggest one of these. Now, we talked earlier about the cost benefit of personalisation. It usually goes up the more you personalise. Well, in healthcare, it's the exact inverse of that situation. If you look historically where people didn't understand anything about the genetics, the environmental factors, the behavioural factors that fed into a disease, health or disease, you tried to develop a drug where one drug treated everyone.
And you were wasting a lot
And you were
of it,
wasting it. And it would take 15 years because you're trying to get one thing into everyone. So you have to make sure it's safe in everyone, that it works in everyone. And it would take 15 years and around $3 billion to develop a drug. And now we know those drugs increasingly only work for very small patient populations. Personalization will completely turn that on its head and is. So, for example, the sort of companies that I'm involved with, Horizon Discovery, we talked about, for example, they were able to, because the center of function or dysfunction, health, disease is the cell. And the cell is made up of, you would probably heard DNA, right? The small genetic differences between us will determine whether us and our children might get disease, whether we've got it, what's our prognosis when we've got it, and will we respond to a drug at the end of the day.
Are we talking mainly about cancers here?
No, we're not. All diseases, because there is genetic, environmental and behavioural factors, and they all feed in together. Right. So a technology like Horizon's gene editing, what it enables them to do is to look at these minute genetic variances and model them. So you can get a healthy picture of you and a disease picture of you in a test tube. You can then develop drugs that are targeted to those genetic drivers. And this is happening all the time.
Give me the example that you would cite where this has most successfully currently been applied.
Yes, so I'll go into cell therapy. So it's like a toolbox of precision medicines where you get tested. This is my fingerprint of my disease. Here's the 3 or 4 drugs.
And which disease, which particular one? Yeah,
it's particularly in cancer, because cancer is a genetic-based disease. Any disease of aging, which is about genetics, etc. around there, those types of diseases are being personalized.
How often would what you would call personalised medicine, how often is that now being done?
Absolutely routine. It's a standard. If you go in and any type of cancer, for example, you will be sequenced, and then you'll find out your fingerprint, and the drugs from the toolbox that match your letters A, C, F, G, for example, will be treated to give you a better outcome. But the truly individualized is really taking off now, is the area of cell therapy. This is the area where you actually use your own cells to actually cure your disease. And this is happening across the world now. And all my companies that I'm involved with, Mogrify, Elixir, etc., they're regenerative medicine companies.
It is really exciting. Now, Kate, I mean, as you're an analyst here, is that the same thing as Handelsbanken and Citroën and the ways in which they're personalising? I'm trying to work out whether that's because it's a sharp contrast that it is cheaper if you're not wasting drugs, or it's cheaper if the treatment works, because instead of having a sick person in hospital for ages, you have a person who is sent home well again.
It is the general trend, and it may start off being more expensive initially, but with the application of technology and data, it becomes cheaper.
This is fundamental.
It's the Savile Row example, because you said at the beginning, you said Savile Row is one end of the spectrum, and in fact that is that end of the spectrum.
But it doesn't even have to be particularly expensive. There's an interesting company in America, West Coast, called Habit, which is a personalised diet and meal delivery company. It's actually owned by Campbell's Soup. You pay about $300. They send you a kit similar to a one-off $300 fee, and it's got blood test kit, which you do yourself. It's got a drink in it, a sort of powder that you make up into a drink. And so the idea is you do your own fasting mouth swab for your DNA. You take 3 blood tests, just a little spot of blood that you do yourself. You send all that off to the lab, and then the rest of the service is about giving you a personalised dietary plan per week according to the fact that you perhaps are not very good at processing glucose, or you've got a problem with the fats, and so it'll say for you, you've got to have more of these foods and fewer of those foods.
This fits in because I only talked about the one half, which was the supply side, but you're not going to solve the healthcare challenge and why healthcare is so expensive until you do the consumption side and the societal side. Because if you still diagnose people very late, and it's still very expensive to deliver that, you have to solve the environmental and behavioural factors, where you live, the way you live, the health and wellness aspect, the behaviour, the choices you make with your lifestyle and the impacts they have on your health. And technology, this is where I'm most excited about, because it's where it's a multidisciplinary science and interdisciplinary business models with healthcare and tech. So it'll be routine moving forward that you have health and wellness monitoring at home. Your diet will become more personalised, and that data will be collected and linked through into an evolutionary diagnostic system. And the drugs will then be partnered back through.
You're such a great evangelist for the technology in medicine, Darren. Just sticking to the general theme of personalisation, though, what is really striking is that technology can personalise, but technology often depersonalises. I mean, I'm struck Handelsbanken is not the most technical bank.
No.
Its app is less sophisticated than the apps you'll get from challenger banks, new challenger banks. It's the I wouldn't call it anti-technology. It's the non-technological personalisation.
Well, I think what we find with our customers is actually simple and functional is what they want. It's not actually bells and whistles. It's not a full DNA profile being sent to give me a shake every day. They actually want to keep it simple. They want people that understand them, listen to them, and I think that's what we offer. So yeah, I mean, I'm interested in the data side because I just worry. How safe do we feel it is giving this amount of us away? That's the thing.
Yeah, when you link technology to personalisation, it's basically data.
Yeah,
key.
absolutely.
And so let's talk about that. Is that a danger? Should we be worried about the amount of myself I have to give away in order to benefit from individualisation?
It did worry me. I mean, it sounds super exciting, Darren, and it does worry me a little bit in where we're trying to personalise everything in terms of healthcare, because you hear lots of people who smoke every day of their life and have a drink every day of their life and they live to their 92, and then other people go to the gym and they, God forbid, drop down when they're 37. So I'm interested that we can't personalise everyone and we can't keep people living forever.
Okay, Darren.
I'm going to just really try and nail it this time, right?
Yeah.
The personalisation of the health and wellness, because the issue is not going to be about whether you survive or not. Like now it's going to be how well you live, how you understand how your health and disease is evolving through life. And the technologies are not blood anymore. You'll see a company like Alstone Medical, amazing company in UK based in Cambridge, where they're looking at breath biopsy and they're measuring disease in the breath. So very early stage diagnosis. And the e-medicine companies where they're collecting telemetry, not by extracting you PhD knowledge from the consumer, by using standard technology that you're using in your house and in your phones and everything every day today to collect telemetry that are key predictors of how healthy and well you are living, including diet and various things like that. So you'll get a better picture from a healthcare economics perspective. This is the society piece, where the challenges are in how is it stratified? What should our priorities for resources be?
My sort of instinct on all of this is that if there is a clear consumer benefit, people will say, we don't mind giving you our data. I mean, I'm not going to mind giving you my data if I need a cancer treatment, and I'll give you any amount of my data to make it better, to get one that works. Where I think people's suspicion on data comes into account is where they don't think there's any benefit for them.
Exactly. I would reinforce that, certainly. I mean, we know from the Cambridge Analytica scandals that our tech industries have run completely wild and scraped our data and used it in ways that we couldn't possibly have given permission because we couldn't possibly have understood it. And that's where things have gone horribly, horribly wrong, I personally think. And it's the biggest issue in our industry, really, is how do you balance the need for application of artificial intelligence, technology and use of data to make the world a more efficient and to make everything more optimized and have less waste without impacting people's need for privacy, which is a fundamental human right. And what we're seeing is really both the best and the worst is in China, because in China they have completely optimized retail. They call it new retail.
What's this?
And this is the big tech companies, basically their equivalents of Amazon and Google, have created a new generation of retail predominantly it's supermarkets, but also other sectors.
Physical retail.
Physical retail stores, because they don't believe the future of retail is digital only, very interestingly. It's a complete mixture of physical and digital, but you can't buy anything from these supermarkets except through your phone. So you have to have the app. Everything is done through their systems, so you use their payments platforms, which means that they know exactly where you are, what you're doing. They also own all the communications platforms.
What do I do when I go into one of these shops?
You go in and you just scan the items that you want, put them in the basket and walk out with them.
Yeah.
Because it's already deducted your account.
Yes.
They know everything you pay for, everything you buy, everything you look up online. They know every message that you send. They know where you travel.
Indeed.
And they are developing effectively a version of surveillance capitalism. Yes. And this is a new phrase that we're starting to hear, especially because of the recent release of the book, of course, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism by Shoshana Zuboff. And she gives a new position that we've never really connected all these dots before of the way the world is going in terms of how the big tech companies are using our data in a way that is not in the interest of the consumer or indeed of democracy itself.
You hit a nail on the head. Everything we've talked about today has a positive and a negative benefit. So if you think of healthcare, for example, everyone will be genetically sequenced at birth. We will know throughout the population where the problem areas are in terms of who's likely to get what type of disease and when, etc. Now, that's really great news for managing healthcare economics. But who gets access to that information?
It's not great news.
Will the pharmaceutical
you can't get insurance?
Would the pharmaceutical companies develop drugs for people that only affect poor people in a certain demographic around the world? Will they invest the money to develop those drugs? If the insurance companies get over that and can plug that into actuarial calculations, will you get a genetic social underclass from insurance? We talked about the positives of big data, and the positive is you can now already use an Aviva app, and actually instead of judging that you live in this area with this garage and that's your car insurance, they can determine how you drive, where you drive, when you drive, etc., make on-the-fly calculations of your car insurance. These things are already happening, but the negatives are very clear to see.
And I think that is why you'll never get past the relationship and the person.
So look, this is really interesting because I've really learned something. So technology applications to personalisation obviously involve a huge amount of data, downsides and upsides. I do want to just finish with the reflection where we started, which is that personalisation is different to how it used to be, but is actually a return. It's back to the future. I mean, we did have personalisation in the pre-industrial days of capitalism.
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
But people still want it. Yeah.
Great stuff. What a big topic. Thank you all so much. We better leave it there. My guests, Darren Disley, Chief Executive now of Mogrify, a big player in the Cambridge biotech scene. Georgina Sylvester, Chief Operating Officer Designate of Handelsbanken UK. Carl Howkins, Managing Director of Citron UK. And Kate Ancketill, the Founder and Chief Executive of GDR Creative Intelligence. Thank you all for participating. Thank you at home for listening. And I'll be back with more guests next week.